So yeah, I have the privilege of leading this second panel discussion of the day, Driving Change for Our Patients. I don't know who came up with that title, but I do think it's a great title. And the reason I like it is because it captures one of Dana-Farber's core values, and that is all of us strive all the time to innovate in all sorts of ways to improve the lives of patients with cancer at our institution and around the world. And a lot of times, we're the only place that have come up with those ways of improving lives of patients. So for example, this is seen in the research side, where I think you've heard us talk over the years about our balanced portfolio, how we devote ourselves to doing 50% outstanding patient care and 50% cutting-edge research. And I will remind you that Dana-Farber is the only cancer center that has this as its goal. And I would also remind you that the only reason we can do this is because of generous donations from people like you. But we also innovate all the time in patient care, in particular around nursing care, because it's nursing care that first impacts our patients with cancer. And we also innovate around health equity, this idea of making sure that everyone with cancer, even individuals who are part of historically marginalized communities, get the benefit of the care and the research that we do in cancer. And so in today's panel, we actually have representatives from all three of these areas: research, nursing, and health equity. And so I would ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves, do the same deal we did with the last panel. Tell us who you are and what your role is at the Institute. Start with Toni.
I'm Toni Choueiri. I'm a medical oncologist. I do exclusively GU tumor, genitourinary oncologist. I lead the division of 25 doctors, and also another hat, I'm the medical director of the business initiative at Dana-Farber.
Ann?
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Gross. I'm an oncology nurse and senior vice president for patient care services and chief nursing officer at Dana-Farber.
Karen Burns-White. I have the pleasure to work across the research consortium of Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center, where the work that I do helps to influence health equity as well as look for initiatives to reduce the unequal burden of cancer.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I feel very honored to be on the stage with you guys. I'm going to begin with Toni. So, clinical trials. Let's talk about clinical trials. To me, that's where the rubber really hits the road when we talk about how we're going to bring our science to patients and test whether or not our science actually is going to benefit them. So there are a bunch of different kinds of clinical trials. There are ones that are initiated by investigators. There are ones that are initiated by drug companies. Maybe you could take a few minutes and tell us about the various types of clinical trials and, importantly, how they're funded.
Well, yeah, thank you, Barrett. I mean, clinical trials is the way where these drugs that we develop or partner with us from the lab, take them and apply them to the patient, whether they're first in a human or at the second level, phase 2, or they're at the phase 3 studies where they are compared to what is the standard. So we beat the standard and move on. And that's why in the past 5 years, half of the drugs approved by the FDA came from Dana-Farber. So there are several ways to do it, but the most two common ways are the industry-sponsored trial. There's a drug owned by industry. They come to us. Usually these are, not exclusively, but usually these are larger studies that happen not just in the US, they're all international. The approval can happen and mostly happen in the US and spread other places that are very, very complex. Many of them led by Dana-Farber folks. They cost on average today hundreds of millions of dollars,
yes, yeah.
By the way. And sometimes one...
Just saying.
And four, not anymore, but 4 out of 5, at least this is from a couple of years ago, fail. You know, because this is how, you know, when you apply it from the animal to the first in a human to then a regular population, it fails. So that's one. Second, and we work on that. The second way is we take a drug. This is an investigator-sponsored study We benefit from the consortium of the Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center that has multiple studies, usually are smaller, usually are heavy in science. For example, Dr. Van Allen and I collaborated now for more than 10 years where we do the trial, we do the biopsies, we take the tissue and the blood, it goes to Ellie's lab, and we do some of the most innovative things that in many situations the industry is not doing. They have no idea about. And we take it to the next level. It's smaller. Sometimes it's funded. It's funded by pharma sometimes in a way, but it's us who leads it. That's in general the two ways to do it, and the cooperative groups studies, which is in the middle in a way, and mostly in the United States.
So I love that sort of note of shock and surprise when you said pharma's funding these. Great. Thank you, Toni. So let me move on to a related question to Anne. So Dana-Farber is justifiably known for the quality of its nursing. But one of the things that people may not know is that nursing is not just one thing. There are many, many different types of nurses at Dana-Farber, different kinds of training, different kinds of responsibilities. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the spectrum of nursing at Dana-Farber is really about.
Sure, be happy to do that. Well, I'll just start. Nurses in general were trained in a holistic model to focus on health promotion, healing, and ensuring quality of life for patients no matter where we encounter them. And so you can imagine, it's not surprising that at a place like Dana-Farber, no matter where you go in the institute as a patient, you're going to encounter a nurse. And as Barrett says, there are many different kinds of nurses from starting out in the community through our Cancer Care Equity Program. We have nurses that work with our lay navigators to educate and outreach to our vulnerable communities, to support health promotion activities, help patients in different communities get in for screenings and so on. And then in the hospital, probably the majority of our nurses are delivering direct patient care in the hospital, around the clock, or in the infusion areas, treating patients that are actually with us in an active treatment. And we also have nurses that are, we call hospital-based navigators, oncology nurse navigators, that are coordinating care, all the tests, all the different steps to care and treatment that a patient and their loved one will experience. And all the while, thinking about and holding that patient through and their loved ones through the whole experience of cancer treatment. We also have nurses that are very specialized in working with our investigators on clinical trials. And so, that is a huge responsibility for nurses very specially trained in how to conduct research in a trial and how to keep a patient safe from the beginning of the time that they enter and enroll in the trial until they complete treatment. And so they're constantly with that patient assessing them for symptoms and side effects and ultimately toxicities if that were to happen. And so really supporting patients through drug trials. And then finally, we have a center for nursing and patient care services research where we have nurse scientists who are conducting original research and thinking again about what are nurses interested in. We're interested in, and our nurse scientists are interested in symptom science, and a lot of what they study has to do with understanding what, as the field changes and new modalities for treatment are coming forward, what are the symptoms and side effects that patients are going to experience, and how do we intervene and understand why some patients experience some symptoms and others don't. And they're involved in a lot of quality of life studies too, how to ensure the best quality of life for our patients through treatment.
And you might let the audience know about, briefly, some of the challenges that nurses who do original research face at Dana-Farber.
Well, we're in fact, there are some challenges, although we have grown. We are the largest center for nursing research in any cancer center in the country. But you're right, like other investigators, we struggle for funding and to get our studies funded. Probably the biggest thing that we're working on now relates to the fact that Harvard University does not have a College of Nursing associated with it. So we partner with a number of universities in the city, but we're really looking now to consider how to develop a stronger partnership with a single university so that our nurse scientists can also hold faculty positions and progress academically in a College of Nursing.
Yeah, that's something that we really, at the Institute, we really support. And I, as the academic dean for Dana-Farber, I have this Harvard thing looking over my shoulder, but I think we really need to support our nursing faculty as they look at academic positions. So thank you for that. Karen, so we've heard from the moment people walked in here about the incredible advances that are being made in treating cancer and understanding cancer. And as wonderful as all that is, we know that the burden of cancer is still disproportionately supported, felt, impacted by individuals from traditionally marginalized populations. This is something that you work on not only within Dana-Farber, but within DFHCC. Maybe you could talk a little bit about things like the Navigator program and others, where we try to get a more equitable sort of distribution of our advances.
Thank you, Barrett, for the question, and it's really important and key, and allow me to reference my notes. The concept and model of patient navigation really is what we like to refer to as the rapid response, which allows you to assess, identify, and address barriers which could impede one's treatment and care planning process. It was Dr. Harold Freeman, a surgeon at a Harlem hospital back in 1990, who very quickly noticed that individuals from marginalized communities really had better outcomes when we address not only the cancer care, but we approach the patient through a holistic lens and not just the disease. So when we think about the news of a cancer diagnosis, it's significant for everyone. And once getting over the initial shock of having cancer, the wheels are in fact put into motion. But for some, when that cancer diagnosis is revealed, the process of seeking treatment may not be their immediate priority. Before the conversation of even care planning or including the who, what, the where, there are more pressing matters that might need to be addressed. Could include things such as financial constraints. How am I going to hold on to my job? What about health insurance? Yes, I have it, but will there be any out-of-pocket costs? And even things such as transportation, right? Maybe the plan of care could include daily radiation or chemotherapy visits. How in the world am I going to make this happen? And so in 2022, under the leadership of Dr. Chris Lathan, Dana-Farber's Chief Clinical Access and Equity Officer, there was a centralized patient navigation system that was developed and successfully implemented for adult patients, primarily from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute's priority neighborhoods, which include Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, and Jamaica Plain. And the patient navigators at Dana-Farber, they are members of the interdisciplinary team, and they serve in the capacity of proactively identifying, even before patients come on board or come in for a visit, they look to remove any obstacles that could in fact get in the way. So patients are contacted prior to their first visit. They are, if resources are needed prior to coming in, and it could be the situation where there are community resources that could help in this regard. But quite often, these navigators are able to contribute information to the overall care planning team that may not be revealed if it wasn't for having these intimate conversations. And so we are really thankful and grateful for the generous giving to allow this program to be launched. We're grateful that navigators are currently embedded in 4 different disease areas. And we're grateful that we're looking forward to expanding where our navigators currently serve and looking to move to the hematologic malignancies area. And so, again, the end goal, right, is that everyone has access, that we're looking to advance health equity. We want to level the playing field in this space. And we're looking to not only level the playing field, but reduce no-show rates, increase adherence to treatment, as well as ensure the supportive utilization of supportive services at Dana-Farber.
That's so helpful, Karen. It's a great picture of where our problems are in terms of equity. But I'm going to stick with you for a second because you've talked about access to healthcare, but there's another access issue that you've spent a lot of time working on, and that means a lot to me. I've actually participated in your programs occasionally, and that's access to training and education. One of the problems that Dana-Farber faces is the underrepresentation of individuals in our faculty and in leadership positions. And what we constantly come up against is the pipeline problem. Individuals from underrepresented communities who have not been able to get into the pipeline to get to the point where we can recruit them to our faculty or our staff and so on. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the things you've done around improving that access.
So Barrett knows that my sweet spot in having been at Dana-Farber for many of years is what I call the continuing umbrella of research experiences, the CURE program. The CURE program is a research program that exposes underrepresented students from high school, undergraduate students, as well as post-baccalaureate students to the field of cancer research. It gives individuals this early exposure, puts them in environments where they thought or they never would have thought that they could in fact be in. It's a program that operates, we have multiple tracks, we have a 2.5-year program, we have a summer-only program, but to be able to see firsthand these individuals participate in research, be able to communicate their research and be part of a research team is so very remarkable. Additionally, through the leadership of Candace Burns, who heads up the Workforce Development Department, there are other programs. There are adult programs. She has 9 pipeline programs that afford individuals from surrounding communities and even from within Dana-Farber opportunities to finish their degrees, opportunities to engage in clinical research management. We've had problems with regards to having enough individuals to manage our clinical trial system. Now we have a clinical research pipeline that allows for individuals to be trained in that space. And again, the importance of all of these programs is that it allows for our workforce to be better prepared, but provide the necessary exposure for individuals to, in fact, assist in areas that they may not have had the opportunity to be part of.
Yeah, so back when I was running a lab, I had a couple CURE students in the lab, so I'm a satisfied customer. It's really a great program, and you've had amazing successes. There are individuals who are in the biotech industry, gone on to get PhDs, that might not have otherwise done so. So I think it's a real success story. But speaking of that pipeline, Anne, so people may have read in the newspaper, seen news reports about the fact immediately after the pandemic, there's been an incredible shortage of nurses. And I've seen some statistics that, or some projections that suggest the nursing shortage may last for another decade, which is pretty frightening if you think about it. So I'd like to hear your opinions about the nursing shortage and the kind of things that you're thinking of doing at Dana-Farber to help address this.
Sure. Well, the nursing shortage actually that we're in right now was really predicted before the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated it and made it even bigger than it is. But you know, there are a lot of reasons for that. But we started planning at Dana-Farber back in 2015. I think we conceived of and started our first newly licensed nurse residency program, and that was with the support. Dr. Glimpscher was, and others in the Institute, very supportive of us testing this concept. You know, we don't get federal funding in nursing for training after graduation. And you can't graduate from colleges of nursing today and come into a clinical environment like Dana-Farber and practice. The learning curve is just too great. So we piloted this concept, and it's now a very robust, incredibly competitive residency program that's grown with funding, continued funding from many sources, several very wonderful donors that have really supported us in training the next generation. We've done it in partnership with the University of Massachusetts, Boston. We're very committed to, along with training the next generation in that pipeline, really trying to attract a more diverse population to the profession. And interestingly, just as you heard about Karen describe the CURE program, one of our residents about 3 years ago was a graduate of the CURE program that went on to finish school and then worked in a lab at Dana-Farber, but decided she wanted to go to nursing school. And so we supported her, and now she's a nurse working in one of our the patient care units. So it really, it's such a powerful example about how far upstream we need to start in building these pipeline programs, but how successful they can be if with dedicated resources.
Yeah, so you've talked about the importance of training, specific training around oncology for oncology nurses. Maybe you could take a step back and say a few words about the importance of an oncology-trained nurse in the actual care of an oncology patient. Why should we care about that?
It's very important to care about that because nurses are, they're nurses that are specialized in many different areas, but healthcare has become so complex, and certainly our field is so complex that to have a nurse that, in our setting, where our nurses are, they're not just trained generally in oncology, they're trained very specifically about what are all the aspects of breast cancer that patient would be coming to us that would have needs around, and how can they and all of the interventions that go along with supporting a patient through treatment. And so you don't have that expertise if you can't specialize. And so that time to become specialized needs to be carved out of a regular work environment to a learning environment, which we have been able to do with our residency program. And it really is critical, and it's one of the wonderful things that we look forward to as we build our cancer-only hospital, that every single patient taken care of in our beds will be cared for by oncology-trained nurses.
See how I set you up for that?
You did. I just loved it. I didn't even know you were going to do that.
Yes, unbelievable.
So, Toni, you've been uncharacteristically quiet.
18 minutes left, all for me.
All for you. So I know in the last session, Bill talked a lot about collaboration, but I'd like you to talk about collaboration from the point of view of somebody who does trials, who works. I think you are one of the most efficient and effective people who works with our scientists, laboratory scientists who don't necessarily do clinical trials. Talk a little bit about that and where those collaborations go and why they're so important to what you do.
I mean, that will take 18 hours, not 18 minutes. But let me start by what you asked me first. These industry-sponsored large trials and the investigator-sponsored trials, and I'll give you an example from people in the room, okay? So I start working with Bill Kaelin since I came here. You probably know Bill Kaelin, 2019 Nobel Prize.
Yeah, but what has he done lately?
So you're because that's how I talk to Bill. It's like, so, but this patient of mine is not responding, and it's your fault. Sure. In medicine or physiology, although he may get something else in the same group at some point. So we started working. Bill was working on a protein called VEGF that drives what we call the angiogenesis, tumor growth through blood vessel that feed the tumor. It's another way about it. And kidney cancer is the treatment, is the example, the poster child of this, not as much other malignancy, and that led to the approval of many drugs. But Bill also at the same time, was working, targeting another protein, a different protein, a transcription factor, what means for all of us, this is or at least some of us, protein that is hard to target. There's a lot of protein in the body, bad ones, but hard to target, but was able, him and another team, to target HIF2, and that and other were the base of the Nobel Prize in 2019. And, Bill and I started with a startup that was a spin-off, and little by little there were drugs, and the drugs, we did it a phase 1 study, first in a human, funded by the company, and it showed in a refractory patient, a very hard to treat patient with kidney cancer, responses around 20-30%, and overnight, there's another famous company by the name Merck that came and took overnight. It happened overnight, and now Merck is able to do hundreds of million-dollar trials, and we did the trial. Bill was involved in 25 countries, 300 sites in the world, and I just landed yesterday at noon from Madrid because we were presenting that trial of 800 patients that I think is going to lead to the approval to that drug. So that was an example how we work from A to Z to industry. Now, let me tell you another example of another dear friend of mine here, Kathy Wu. Kathy has worked nonstop in cancer immunology on cancer vaccine. And I remember when I trained in Cleveland, I'm from the Midwest. That's not a Saudi accent, by the way. Yeah, too. Yeah, Cleveland, another Cleveland. Okay. Cleveland Browns fan. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that in Boston.
It's fine.
Is anyone from...
This year, it's fine.
Anyone from, okay. Anyone from the Kraft family? No, okay. No. I just don't want to get in trouble. So, we work with Kathy Wu on a cancer vaccine. When I trained in Cleveland, when I go for advice, and they tell me two things. Anything you want to do in GU, there are two things you cannot do. One, radiation, and second, cancer vaccine. So of course, what Dana-Farber does is what people cannot do and are not willing to do, and even teach some generation not to do. Kathy has been working on that. We just recently finished first in a human trial, an investigator-sponsored trial. When you tell me about investigator-sponsored trial, that's a trial that did not have money. Kathy and I had to write, and several others in the room here, Patrick Ott, Ed Fritsch, other, had to write grants to the Department of Defense and other, and we finished trial of 14 patients. We didn't have any cancer that came back after resection, and the paper is in review. And this is another example how we all can work together. So I gave you an example about one with Dr. Kaelin that led to an industry sponsor, another one that led also to a trial. Both we work, again, like you said, the patient at the center. It doesn't matter how and how hard it is.
Yeah, it's great. And I'll just add that our collaborations go much farther than that. So many of you know about our profile program, which gets DNA sequence information on the cancers and leukemias of all the patients who come to Dana-Farber. We, right from the beginning, shared all of those data with what is now a 35 hospital consortium around the world, which is sponsored by the American Association for Cancer Research. It's called Project Genie. And we were just ready to give that data out and make sure that everybody could share it with some rules around it, but it's available publicly. And that sort of, again, goes against this notion that people are just not talking to each other. We talk to each other all the time, as Bill pointed out. So that's another great example, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to end up the same way that the other group ended up. I'm going to ask each of you, what's next? This session is about innovation. What's next? What's new? What's around the corner? What's the thing you're most excited about that's going to happen in the next year or two? And because Toni's vocal cords are all warmed up, I'm going to ask Toni first.
I don't want to talk just about like the cancer prevention, the vaccine, the work that Ellie Van Allen is doing, first of its kind in AI and oncology. I want to just talk how excited about the international collaboration that Dana-Farber is having. It's different than other centers. We're not going to a place, let's say, in Brazil or in Canada and build a hospital. No, we are trying to train the folks there outside. So I give an example of the largest practice in Latin America, in Brazil, of 600-700 oncologists that is by the name Oncoclínicas, and how we're training them, not just in oncology, and they come, but in leadership, in pharmacy, in nursing, in tumor board, in precision oncology, to have another perhaps branch in a way there too. I'm excited about that, how it's evolving. I'm also excited about the international academic collaboration. We talked about Gustave Roussy in France. That's at least ranked by Newsweek, the first cancer center in Europe. Ahead of us. I don't understand how the French can be, but that's okay. And we did several conferences back and forth with their top people. Dr. Van Allen and I were in Paris last week, part of the exchanges. I'm very excited about that, and we're warming up.
Plus, you get to go to Brazil and Paris.
Right, and accumulate miles.
Yeah, it's not a bad gig,
Yeah.
right? Anne?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things, but I think in the forefront right now for me is our new hospital. And I'm both excited and terrified because we'll be recruiting about 800 nurses over the next many years, and we have to find them.
You're going to interview each one.
But I think there are many ways, and we have so much potential right here inside Dana-Farber, and was just talking to some of my colleagues at the break about the kind of next frontier for building the pipeline is we have a number of employees right here at Dana-Farber who work as clinical assistants and in other entry-level jobs who have incredible dreams and career aspirations that they haven't had the opportunity to pursue because they don't have the funding, they have a lot of juggling, a lot of competing demands, and yet those dreams and aspirations are there, and I think we have recently received a little bit of funding to prove this concept, to provide tuition scholarships for clinical assistants that are interested in careers in healthcare, and I really want to do more of it. And I think we're at a time in Dana-Farber history where there is a tremendous commitment to this, and I think we can really make a lot of progress.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, 800 nurses is a very daunting number, but you know, thanks to what you've done, I think these end up being really attractive jobs. So I don't think it's going to be that hard.
Well,
right?
thank you for your vote of confidence.
Yeah, well, don't come to me if you have. Karen?
Thank you, Barrett. So, you know, on the patient navigation front, there's no reason why every single patient from our priority neighborhoods cannot have a patient navigator, no matter what their disease of cancer is. And so we want to expedite getting navigators into all of our disease centers. So that's number one. And we want our patients to know that they are in fact welcome, and that no matter what their disease is, we will be there to look at them as a whole patient, right? We don't want them to worry about childcare, and we don't want them to worry about how are they going to manage getting back and forth. We want them to worry about getting through their cancer journey and not these other factors. And then secondly, on the training front, ideally, I want every single research environment, whether it's in nursing, whether it's on the basic science front, or even within clinical research, to be open to having a student under their wing so that they can learn and get this early exposure and recognize that it does in fact matter, and their input matters, and their diversity of thought matters, right? In addition, I think it's really important to look at developing new collaborations. We've started having some conversations with historically Black colleges and universities, and really trying to gain their insight and their input into coming into the Boston area, right? And being able to have these kinds of experiences within our research front. So I think that all of these things are definitely doable. And with, you know, donors like such as yourself, that we can make these things happen.
That's fantastic. So it's been a real privilege to share the stage with you. You've given us, you know, just incredibly inspiring visions for the future, and I'm sure they're all going to come to fruition. So thank you again very much.